Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is part of a Palomar Civic Engagement ongoing workshop, and we are very happy today to host our local California Redistricting Commission representative, Patricia Sinay. I am going to share my screen so we can make our way through a brief introduction. Again, Palomar College is trying to expand civic engagement with our students, faculty, staff, and community. We do this work as part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. In 2020, we had our longstanding commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion reinvigorated, as did the rest of the world. Our campus is focused on building an anti-racist framework. We have a list of calls to action that include expanding civic engagement opportunities. And we believe that we do this work because it enhances democracy by building our collective knowledge of how political representation affects our daily lives. So today's workshop focuses on the political boundary redistricting process in California. We are very fortunate today to be joined by Commissioner Patricia Sinay. I'll read a short bio. Commissioner Sinay has worked with civil society organizations and community leaders from the United States, Latin America, North America, the Middle East, Africa, and Central Europe. Her early career consisted of work with various international development and human rights organizations in Washington, D.C. She started her philanthropic career at the San Francisco Foundation and later moved to San Diego, where she served on the executive team of the San Diego Foundation. She has lectured on public service at UCSD and is a former member of the Encinitas Union School District Board. In 2015, Commissioner Sinay was one of 24 Latinas in California to participate in the Hispanas Organized for Political Equality Leadership Development Institute and a finalist for the San Diego Union Tribune's Latino Champions Award. Commissioner Sinay founded Community Investment Strategies as a consulting firm that connects nonprofits or corporations, government agencies, and foundations' passions to action. Commissioner Sinay is a founding member of Women Give San Diego and the Latina Giving Circle of San Diego. Most recently, she was selected by the Association of Fundraising Professionals as San Diego's 2020 Volunteer of the Year. Commissioner Sinay was born in Mexico to a Peruvian mother and Argentine father. She earned a master's degree in international affairs from American University and her bachelor's degree in political science with an emphasis in international relations from UCLA. Most importantly, she's a wife as well as a mother of two wonderful and generous and beautiful children. We are fortunate to have this opportunity to host Commissioner Sinay at Palomar College, and we welcome you to our virtual campus community. I will stop sharing and Commissioner, you're welcome to take over the screen. Again, thank you everybody for participating, and we will hear from the Commissioner, and at the end, there will be some opportunity to ask some questions.
Great. Thank you, Olga. Olga and I have known each other for a long time, so it sounds very strange to me for her to call me Commissioner Sinay. So everyone, please just call me Patricia or Patricia, either one. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm very honored to serve the state of California, which means each and every one of you, on this important commission. So I'm going to share my screen, and Olga, if you don't see it and I'm talking, please tell me you don't see it. All right.
There it is. Thank you. We see it.
Okay, let me start it from the beginning. All right. Again, thank you for inviting me today and really inviting the California Citizen Redistricting Commission to present. I am one of 14 commissioners selected to draw the new electoral district lines following the 2020 census. In this redistricting basics presentation, we will be going over who the commission is, what we do, and how you can get involved, which is the most important piece of all of this. Olga already introduced me, but just a couple of things I wanted to add that you usually don't put in the bio, but I think is important, is that civic engagement is one of my passions. Making sure that everybody has a voice and engages in their communities and building and strengthening their communities has always been important to me. And that's actually how Olga and I met. I had learned that there was a Latina running for office in Escondido, and I was determined to go and meet her and help in any way I could. As a friendly reminder, I won't be able to accept any public input today. So I can't hear, what you like about your districts, what you don't like about your district lines. I can answer any questions about redistricting, about the process. I just can't speak about the lines. And that's because we really believe in public comments being public and all 14 commissioners getting the privilege of hearing what you have to say. There's plenty of time for you to participate in other meetings or just send in your comments without even going to a meeting. And I'll tell you all about that as we move forward. So what is redistricting? We kind of say it's the stepchild or the cousin of the census and voting, but really you have the census, and after the census comes redistricting, and then after redistricting comes voting or representation. So this is really when we draw the new boundaries that determine which Californians are represented by each elected official. And that's all Californians. It's not just Californians who are 18 and older or who are registered to vote. So why do we have to draw district lines every 10 years? Well, think about where you were 10 years ago and where you are now. This is the main reason why we draw the lines. It's a lot changes. People move, communities, change demographically, age-wise, their goals may change. People are born, they die, they move within California, out of California, into California, and communities grow and shrink. It's really, the bottom line is we need to make sure that every district is about the same size. And so as communities change, the districts need to be updated to reflect those changes. One of the greatest powers you all have is your voice. And we really believe that the redistricting process is one of the most important ways to assure that your voice is heard. So how district boundaries are configured can make a difference between empowering and maximizing a voter's voice or minimizing and muting those voices. In most other states, politicians redraw the lines and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves to allow them to stay in office. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from the political power. By fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, more communities may have an opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Speaking up about your community is critical to help keep your community whole to the extent possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as the quality and funding of your education or determining your tax rates. Your input is valuable in shaping the new and political boundaries. So how does it affect you directly? Many of you care about education, or you may care about your small business and you care about your business, or the environment, or children. All of that, everything you care about is affected by policy and government. And so that's where this all begins. The Voters' First Act was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing district lines, district maps away from politicians and gave it to the people. California was the first to do this, to create an independent redistricting commission. Now it's kind of become a movement throughout the country, but it's still just a handful of places that have an independent redistricting. And also, I recently learned that the San Diego County was the first county to have an independent redistricting commission. So we're kind of in the hub of all of this great movement. Having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issue is important in a state like California, where issues can vary drastically from one street to the next. We want to make sure you can champion your issues. Tied to the issue of electing representatives that champion your issues, you might want to elect representatives that have financial interests at heart. As you know, politicians make the budgets. And so when the time comes to build a budget, you will want a representative fighting to ensure that your community gets the money and programs it deserves. And this includes water, education, fire protection, and so much more. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines, determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to help the commission understand where your community starts and where it ends. Redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input to regarding their community. As we said again, any Californian can provide input to regarding their community that ultimately impacts the laws, regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided. So what's the road to fair representation? We need 3 ingredients to build our maps. The first is the census data. Many of you, hopefully all of you, filled out the census information. The census data is running a little bit late getting to us, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the census data will help us figure out how many people live in the state of California, and then it'll go all the way down to smaller neighborhoods and stuff, so we know how many people are there. Then we need the reapportionment numbers. The reapportionment numbers is how many congressional seats each state receives. So the state of California currently has 53. Rumor has it, well, it's more than a rumor, facts have it, that a lot of people have moved out of California, and therefore California will probably have a smaller number than 53. So we're losing a congressional seat, I think, for the first time ever. The U.S. Constitution requires that every American receive a close to equal representation as possible. The whole one vote, one voice, one vote. As the population of districts change over time, it can leave some people overrepresented and others underrepresented. After the federal government updates the census information, which we're expecting now to be in September, originally it was April, so as you can see, it's a big change of time. California will begin to redraw the boundaries of its congressional, state senate, state assembly, and state board of equalization. Historically, legislators have drawn the maps to allow them to choose their voters rather than enabling voters to choose their representative. This former system undermined the concept of fair representation, which is to give the people the power to choose their representatives. So why does an independent redistricting matter? You've heard me mention many times that in a lot of places and traditionally, the elected officials draw their own boundaries and therefore they keep their jobs longer. An independent redistricting commission is important because it leads to fair representation. So here is a picture of 50 people, 60 of them are orange and 40 are purple. And here are 4 different ways that we could draw a map to represent this group. Now, the first 2 maps, as you can see, come out pretty much representative. There's 3 orange and 2 purple. And then the 2 on the far right is gerrymandering, which you might have heard, which gerrymandering is kind of rigging the system so that it allows those who are elected to be reelected. And you'll see that the first one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, number 4, has 5 orange and 0 purple, and the one next to it has 2 orange and 3 purple. Basically, the orange will win and on one and the purple will win in the other. This has happened in the past with political parties, different ethnic groups, maybe even different professional groups, socioeconomic groups, just to assure that the incumbent can stay in office. So how do we draw the lines? I told you about the data. We need 3 pieces of data, with the most important piece of data being the community of interest information, which I think I forgot to say. So we need the census data, the reapportionment data, and then we need your voices. We need to hear from you about where communities are in place. And then we have 6 rules we need to follow in this order. First comes from the US Constitution. Every district must be nearly equal. The second is districts must comply with the Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. And hopefully you've all read, yesterday the House passed update to the Voting Rights Act, and now it's going to the Senate. Number 3, districts must be drawn contiguously, which means they all touch each other. In the past, some of the ways that gerrymandering happened, the whole district didn't touch each other. They were able to circle which groups they wanted together. Districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. And then the final 2, which are harder to do if you're following 1 through 4, but districts should be geographically compact. And that doesn't mean that it's a nice little square box. This requirement refers to the density, not the shape, so that people live close to each other. Where practical, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 assembly districts, and every Board of Equalization district should be comprised of 10 Senate districts. And that one is the hardest to do. People would love it, and it seems easy. Yeah, people are like, how come you can't do it that way? It has to do with numbers again. Also, I'm not allowed to know where any incumbent or political candidates may be living. As I said, we're going to have 1 less congressional seat. Every congressional district will change with 1 seat less. And we can't take into account where the current person who's in that seat lives. And we also can't draw any lines that are favoring or discriminating against incumbents, political candidates, or political parties. Please know that the state of California is not the only one doing redistricting efforts. In San Diego right now, we've got the county, which I really hope that you do participate in the San Diego County's redistricting efforts as well, because it's very important. The city of San Diego, city of Chula Vista are going through redistricting right now and have selected their independent redistricting efforts. I don't know if Palomar College is doing redistricting right now. I do know that Southwestern College is doing their redistricting efforts. So you'll hear about different ones. It can get confusing. And the truth is, for most of them, a community is a community of interest. So it doesn't matter how you define your community for any of these. It could look the same, and you might want to stay together. For the smaller you get, the more personal it may get regarding kind of like Palomar, if they're doing redistricting, just who's going to represent you. So who are we? We're 14 of the most diverse people I've ever worked with. It took us a while to get here. It was a process that took over a year. 20,000 people submitted their interest. I'm guessing some of you out there had said, hey, yeah, I might be interested. And then they sent us their supplemental application, which really was the application. It was as long as a graduate degree application, 5 essays, 3 letters of recommendation, and a lot of financials. And from there, 3 people a Republican, Democrat, and independent kind of looked through all these applications and kept narrowing it down till they finally got to 120 who were interviewed, and that was right when COVID struck. So we went from having in-person interviews to all of a sudden having our first Zoom interviews. So my interview was 90 minutes on Zoom. And then from there, they took it to the legislature. The legislature got to cut 12 people out, from each of the parties. We had 35 at the end of that process, and then they did a ping pong, bingo ball type lottery where they elected the first 8, and I didn't get in the first 8. The first 8 then selected the last 6, and so that's how we got to 14. There are 7 of us from Northern California, 7 from Southern, 8 women, 6 men. We range from 30 years old to in our 60s. We have nonprofit leaders, engineers, pastors, law enforcement officers, political scientists, lawyers, public servants. And we really do reflect the diversity of the state of California, which has been really exciting. We'd love you to come and sit in on a meeting. We meet often, and you can find all that information on our website. And if you need an interpreter to participate participate in the meetings, just notify the commission within 5 business days, and we'll make sure someone's there that can interpret it for you. So our duties are to do the outreach and public input meetings. So today I'm doing my duty by reaching out to all of you and telling you what we do and inviting you to please participate. And then we'll begin to draw the maps. We have 4 maps we're going to draw: congressional map, the state Senate, state assembly, and the Board of Equalization, which does the taxes. As you can see, the 4 maps at the bottom are 4 maps of Sacramento. And so that each of them look a little different. Now, I keep bringing up communities of interest in your communities and how important that is. This is where you come in. We really need to hear from you. We can obtain the city and the county information, but we need the communities to tell us their information. Communities of interest are defined as concentrated populations which share common social and economic interests that should be included with a single district for purpose of its effective and fair representation. Really, we want to know where are the communities with who you live, work, study, play, and why should they stay together, and when it comes to political representation. This may include the people you go to school with. It may be transportation facilities. It can be a lot of different things. And please remember, you can belong to multiple communities. You may have your faith community that looks at things in one way, and then your agricultural community, and then, it all just depends. Keep in mind that community of interest is not the same as a district. Communities of interest are key building blocks for districts. They may be bigger or smaller than districts. Some ways to describe your community is geographic, along waterways, rural, along the 78, boundaries, where does the city end, the county begin, school areas, and then the things you have in common. It would be really a great exercise for all of you to think about your communities of interest and how you would map it, and just, how many communities you all belong to. So what do you do with that information? First, think about how you would describe it in words. And then you draw it on a map. Draw your community on a map and then send it to us. And there's a great tool that we have. It's called our Communities of Interest tool, or COI tool. You'll hear people talk about COI and COIs and all that. That's very redistricting jargon, but you can find it at drawmycacommunity.org. And that's Draw My California Community. And let me show you what that tool looks like. So when you go to drawmycommunity.org, what pops up is a map of the state of California, and then you can zoom in with your zip code, and you can draw the boundaries. You can zoom way in, and it'll have tools for you to draw your boundaries and then describe it, because the words are just as important. What we're asking you to do is to please put a face to the data. We can get all the data from the census and cities and all that, but we can only put faces and stories if you participate. So before I was even selected, or any commissioners were selected, Alex Padilla was the Secretary of State. Now he's our senator. Our congressional Senate in DC. But Alex Padilla went to the California Supreme Court and said, look, it's looking like with the COVID and the pandemic and everything, it's going to be tough to get the data on time from the census to do redistricting properly. Originally, our due date was August 15th. The court said, okay, well, if you can get your data by July 17th, then we'll give you an extension of December 15th. Well, it looks now like we're getting our data by September 30th, which, if you do kind of the math, that would mean that we would be turning in our maps on Valentine's Day next year. I say all this, and I put timeline here in quotes, because we're still trying to work with the state, Secretary of State and others to figure out what is the most realistic timeline, because how we draw the maps, the districts, is going to affect how people run for office, where they want to run, when, and they need to know, wait, what's my district? So we don't have primaries in March. We'll have March primaries whenever it's a presidential primary, and June primaries when it's not a presidential primary. So our primaries are in June, but it still leaves a short window from February to June. So we're working all that out. Just a reminder, I can't take any public input on the lines, but I can answer any of the questions you have. And please do contact us if there's other groups on campus or in your community that might benefit from a presentation like this. Let us know. These are the different ways you can get a hold of us. The easiest is to remember, we draw the lines, ca.org, and you can find the tool there. You can find all our emails and join us on social media where you can get all our updates. Thank you.
Fantastic presentation, Commissioner Sinay. I would like to open the floor to questions. If you could use the raise your hand feature. It's in most Zoom environments, it's nested under the reactions button. It's that little smiley with the plus sign. You might see a raise your hand feature there if you'd like to do that, and I can call on you for your question. You're also welcome to use the chat if you have a question. And I think while people are warming up to it, I will ask the first one. Commissioner, because of COVID, will all of your meetings be on Zoom or held online, or do you anticipate at some point having a real meeting in person? I was fortunate to attend the 2010 process when Cal State San Marcos hosted the commission at that time, and it was just a really invigorating environment with people wanting to express their viewpoint, and the commissioners were listening. And do you anticipate we would be able to do something like that this year?
It's tough, right? What we are planning, obviously, as the deadline keeps getting later and later, we're like, okay, maybe we can. I will tell you that most commissioners, one of the things that excited them the most about this job was to get to travel throughout California and meet our neighbors, meet our people. For right now, most of the planning we're doing is online. And we're coming up, we do see that there is a positive about COVID, that more folks are comfortable doing things online, that maybe we can be more inclusive and more available, and we can do sessions like, for instance, you were saying we did one for San Diego and Cal State San Marcos. And then we did another one in the city of San Diego, but we never did one in Imperial County. So all those folks from Imperial County who wanted to participate had to drive into San Diego. Well, now we could do one in Imperial County being virtual. Even if we do end up getting to a place where we feel that it would be safe for us, we would, either way, we'll be hybrid. We'll always have a place locally where people come and speak, even if there's only one or two commissioners there. The honest truth is we're working on designing that, and I am on the committee that's designing all our outreach and all our engagement. So you'll definitely hear when we're in your neighborhood, and we want to hear from you.
Wonderful. And please do keep me informed, because I can share that information out to the campus. I do see a raised hand for Penn. If you'd like to go ahead and mute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I've seen a few articles in the last few years that talk about the idea of using AI or random generation to create districts. I'm wondering if you ever use any sort of computer technology to help you sort of see patterns or get ideas for districts. I'm assuming ultimately everything is done by hand and you would check that, but I'm wondering if that's involved at any point.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was on a webinar as a participant, not a participant, well, as an audience recently. It was a state webinar on nonprofits and redistricting. And it's just kind of fun to hear how people are talking about it. And this came up, and Professor Levitt, who is kind of he's an expert in everything to do with redistricting. He had the best response. He said, no matter what the computer program is, a human did program it, so there is some bias involved. And what you miss when you do the computer programming is you can take all that data, like we said, you can take the census and the numbers and all that and put them in neat little boxes that are about equal. And boxes, quote unquote, but you'll miss the communities of interest. You'll miss the face and the stories that make it really important to create a representation. And that's where the COI tool comes in. We definitely use technology, but we use technology as a tool, not as the decision maker. Does that answer your question, Ken?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I'll ask another question while we're warming up the crowd. In terms of interaction with the public, can you describe if there are any limitations to a participant providing input? Do you have to be a registered voter? Do you have to be of a certain age? Do you have to be a US citizen? Who would you like to hear from?
Everybody and anybody. This is the one civic activity that even if you call in to give a public comment, we ask you to provide your name and the spelling of your name, but you don't have to. Everybody is represented by their government officials. It doesn't matter if you voted for them or didn't vote for them, if you're registered, if not registered, if you're a US citizen or resident or not. So everyone can participate. And with the community of information tool, we will ask some information and you can put it in or not about some personal information. I would encourage people to put in their email address and put in some information, because you'll also get a copy of it, which then you can submit to your county redistricting efforts or a city redistricting efforts. And so that you can use the same map and the same effort more than one time. But everybody is welcome to participate. And there's different ways to participate, because I think our PowerPoint goes over it really quickly, but you can submit your community of interest. So you can, using our tool. And then you might want to go to meetings where you talk about your community of interest as well. And then once we get that data and we get the census data, we'll start drawing lines. And so you may want to participate in talking about the lines, saying, no, you didn't get it right. Hey, wait, I told you that my community of interest went into Temecula. I know it's Riverside, but we want to stay together. Those type of things. And then we have a final maps where we've gotten everyone's input, and then you can tell us how we got it right or wrong. Any line that's moved, all the lines need to move. So we are starting from scratch. So as I said, we have one less congressional district. That doesn't mean that we know it's going to be this one in Santa Clara and we'll pull it out. Let's move all of the districts and figure, it's just kind of, we're creating a new map from scratch.
Would anybody else like to ask a question?
Also, don't let language or any other barrier, we're trying to be as accessible as possible. So if in any way we're not meeting the needs of your family or your neighbors, please let us know and we'll do what we can to accommodate those needs.
That is fantastic. At some point, I think it's important when we continue to engage with our Palomar community that maybe some of our statistics classes or political science classes will be keenly interested in attending or participating or submitting a comment. I think that would be a really great access point for our students, especially. So for example, if the Palomar student community wanted to list themselves as a community of interest, is that something that could be defined? Can you give an example possibly of what a community of interest is outside of race, age, city boundaries? Like what's another sort of nebulous example?
I think Palomar College is a great example. You can go on to the tool and, kind of zoom in and then draw the boundaries of Palomar College and say, this is really important this is our community college district. It's important for us to stay together, to have the same representatives so that we have budget equity or whatever it might be. It could be that, like we were talking about Temecula, some of the it can be agricultural communities of interest, or it could be along the 15. We all travel on the 15 to get from work to home, and therefore we want to be represented correctly. So it really depends on how you're looking at it. It could be your faith, or you're an immigrant from a certain part of the world, and there's a strong Ethiopian community, and we want to stay together as an Ethiopian, so that we get good representation. So it really is diverse, and it can be all sorts of different ways. Now, your community of interest can also counter each other, right? So you might be looking at the 15, you want to be together because you all travel on the 15, but at the same time, the 78 is important because that's where you work, that's where you live and play, and so it's thinking about those things, but just, it's going to be hard. We're expecting, thousands and thousands of pieces of input, and, we have 40 million people in California, and if we got 40 million pieces of input, we would be very, very excited.
And since we're on this topic, does the volume of attention that community members bring to their community of interest, is that what highlights a community of interest? If you only hear from one person that they have a community of interest, and then you have 20,000 other different types of data points or feedback, like how do you decide when you've heard from it? Numbers, like what volume do you need for that community to rise to the level of a community of interest?
That's an amazingly good question, and it's probably one that's keeping me up at night because I haven't done it yet. It's 14. We're 14 individuals who are sitting on this commission that will make those decisions. Now, one of the things we did do was divide the state of California into different regions. So Commissioner Ahmed and I but are doing outreach in San Diego and Imperial County, really getting to know San Diego and Imperial County. The idea is when we get input from San Diego and Imperial County, we will be able to kind of help the rest of the commissioners understand what that input means and feels like. One map may be reflective of 100 people's perspective, or it might just be one person's perspective. And so that's some of the data that you can put when you submit a map and say, hey, this is a lot of time and energy went into this. I don't know all the answers of how we're going to weigh things and what's going to be a priority and what do we do when we have conflicting community of interests. How do we weigh that? That's the hard work that's going to keep us all up at night. But we are all committed that all pieces of data is just as valuable. So if you submit a community of interest today on a napkin via the mail, that'll be just as important to us as if you come in person and tell us what your community of interest is. We're looking at all data the same. What we will do with the napkin is translate it so it can be on the map. We're translating data, and some of it we might not be able to put on a map, but it'll still be important because it tells a story. It puts the faces to the data.
We do have a question from Marilyn Gallegos. She's on a phone line. So Marilyn, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Olga, and thank you, Patricia. What I was wondering, like today you're holding this very valuable workshop in conjunction with Palomar through Olga. So have you had a lot of instances in the past where a commission comes in, you as a representative are making a presentation, but somebody has contacted you with a community of interest identity or platform that's been formed, and where people come in and do sort of like a workshop where one of the commissioners make a presentation, but then the greatest advantage is that it's fresh in people's minds about everything that you've talked about, and then they hold a workshop? Or do you as a commissioner have to keep that separate?
So we're in the process of thinking through how we design it. So Olga talked about the hearings we had last time. I'm trying as much as possible not to create a hearing environment this time. That's my personal opinion is that hearings can be very intimidating and waiting in line. And so kind of what you were describing is what we're looking at for like the second phase. So this phase was just getting enough people to even know what redistricting is, and then doing a second phase where we talk a little bit about redistricting and then go into communities of interest. And we're looking into the legalese and all that. Like, can we as commissioners be present or not, or does it need to be community groups that kind of facilitates? I call it the charrette type building. But those type of workshops, there are different nonprofits that have already received funding statewide to help with that type of work. And then we will have a grants program for community groups as well, that groups can apply for to bring together groups to engage in our process. But I think that's a great idea. And I definitely think that especially with the tool and Zoom, you could do a workshop and you wouldn't have to tell the commissioner right there what we could receive the input without receiving the actual, like right now, you can all be doing the communities of interest tool and submit it straight to the commission, and I would never know what you all said. And so again, we're trying as much as possible to make sure that when input is given, that everybody gets to hear it on the commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you so much. If there are no other questions, I'll give everybody back their time. We really appreciate this. Again, if this is a recorded session, we will post it to our college webpage, and I may even be able to email it out to everybody who is invited. I did get a lot of messages saying, I'm sorry I can't be there at noon, but will it be recorded? So we appreciate your willingness to allow us to record. Thank you for attending, everybody. Any final questions? And we appreciate your, oh, yes, Commissioner.
I just wanted to encourage each of you to talk to at least 3 friends or family members this week about redistricting, so that more and more people know about it. And it would be great for all of you to just go visit our website and play with the tool and submit, when you're ready, submit your communities of interest. But thank you so much for inviting me today. This was really great.
Fantastic. We were honored that you were with us today. And again, thank you so much for your work, and good luck to you in the coming year, as you've got a lot of material to cover and a lot of people to interact with. And we so appreciate that you're our local rep on the Districting Commission. So, all right. Good evening. Good afternoon, I guess. Thank you so much. And we will end the recording.